So this is Laura, aka the Sound Sommelier, here with Skeme Richards. Skeme, what's your earliest memory of hip hop?
Earliest memory of hip hop would have to be graffiti. I started seeing graffiti in Philly in like 77, 78. So I think
Hmm.
that's my earliest memory. And then after that, or even maybe even before that, just block parties and
Yeah,
DJs. So that, you know, that DJ graffiti era, that's my earliest memories.
nice. Which records do you remember hearing in your house growing up?
Um, Everything from Stevie Wonder, Al Green, you know, a lot of jazz, a lot of gospel. You know, that was pretty much it. You know, gospel, jazz, Al Green, Stevie Wonder, you know, stuff like that. A lot of Motown, of course.
Mhm.
So yeah, yeah.
What effect did growing up in Philly have on you pursuing a career in hip hop culture or being your introduction to hip hop culture?
Well, you know, I tell people all the time, Philly is what made me, right? If I think if I wasn't born in Philly and I was born someplace else, I wouldn't be who I am today. You know,
Mhm.
Philly is a very hard critic city. You know, like if you can make it in Philly, you can make it anywhere. You know, they used to say if you can make it in New York, you can make it
Right.
anywhere. Philly is like a lot of tough love, you know. So if you can make it in Philly, you can make it anywhere. And, you know, it was that toughness of Philly that I took out of Philly, which made me, you know, who I am today. So I owe everything to being that Philly and having that Philly attitude and that, you know, that Philly mentality and that diehardness. So
Nice.
yeah,
So not just brotherly love, it's tough love too.
yeah. I don't know how much brotherly love really exists here in Philly. It's a lot of tough love.
Fair. How did you first get your hands on a set of turntables?
First turntables was first time I touched turntables was 1980. I had just moved to my new neighborhood, and the kids that I was going to school with, their older brothers had turntables. So we would go to their house after school, and like I was amazed. It was like, oh, okay, like block parties, yeah. But now I'm seeing kids my own age, which was like 11 years old, 10, 11 years old, you know,
Hmm.
actually DJing. So it wasn't until that Christmas where I got my first actually one turntable. I had got a turntable and a tape deck, right? So I used to just cut and scratch off of the one turntable and mixer to the tape deck. And, you know, few months later is when I got my second turntable. So yeah, it was like 1981, 11 years old, you know, and you're getting toys for Christmas and you're getting turntables for Christmas, you know. So that was like my first like introduction of really touching turntables.
So it was when you were giving them yourself, you didn't really experiment on anyone else's.
Yeah, well, you know, besides the kids' older brothers, but that
Mm,
was so minimal, you know.
right.
So it was just basically me seeing what they were doing, and then once I got my own turntable, it was on. I used to set up one turntable, mixer, tape deck at my grandmother's house on her kitchen table. So that's you know, it was just be scratching one turntable all day, you know. So yeah, that's when it was 1981.
When did your hobby evolve into wanting to pursue a career in music?
Honestly, I never wanted to really pursue a career in music. Like I've
Hmm.
always DJ'd, I've always produced, I've always been around the industry. I've been around the industry since the mid '80s with Pop Art Records in Philly. My OG DJ Groove, who taught me to DJ. Like I've always been around the industry. Early '90s, hanging out with my man Ramos, going like being into labels, all of the record labels in New York's offices, and just being in the scene. And it was one of those things where like I've always had a day job. You know, I've always had good paying day jobs. So it was like, okay, I'm making money over here and I could do a party over there, you know, or I could make a beat over here and sell it to somebody and make money. So I just always wanted to just make money on both sides. It wasn't really a thing of like, this is all I want to do because I knew industry money isn't sustainable and isn't like every week paycheck. I enjoy getting that BMW paycheck every
Hmm.
week, you know, like because that's where I worked for 12 years. You know, so I enjoyed getting that money. And it wasn't until like a little later on where I was like, you know what? I can actually do this and make a living from doing this. But it's hard when you're used to working a day job that's a good paying day job.
Right.
It's kind of hard to stop and go, oh, you know, I'm gonna quit this to just DJ. But
Yeah.
you know, it worked out.
Mhm. Yeah, it's hard to let go of that security, but
It
I'm glad.
is. It really is because you figure you have a paycheck, you have 401k, you have health benefits. You
Right.
know, I'm used to getting paychecks
Hmm.
and enjoying those paychecks. You know, but I
Hmm.
tell people like going to work every day bought me a house.
Right.
Hip hop helped me maintain that house.
Hmm.
You know, so
And stay sane.
exactly, exactly.
Nice. So when did you first learn of the Rocksteady crew and what led to you joining the group?
Like I've been fans of Rocksteady since the early '80s. You know, when breaking was really the thing, and like you know, b-boys like Rocksteady used to come to Philly all the time and battle Philly b-boys, and you know,
Hmm.
of course, seeing them in Star Wars and Beat Street and stuff like that. And then it was early 2000s, 2003. I was doing a lot of funk soul parties in Philly, and it was these two guys that came to my party, right? Two younger guys, two white guys on top of that, coming into like funk soul night, and
Uh-huh.
they started breaking, and I was like, I hadn't seen b-boys in Philly really going to clubs in
Hmm.
like years, right? So I'm looking, and then after the party was over, they stuck around, and they were like, "Yo, we're following you everywhere you go, every party you do, we're there." So they started following me, you know, to different parties. And it's
Hmm.
funny because that night after the party, they were like, "Yo, let's go to Chinatown. Let's go eat. We want to take you to dinner. We want to talk to you." So they followed me around all my parties, and they were like, "You really need to get on the breaking scene with
Hmm.
b-boys." And I was like, "Okay, you know, this is what I spend. I come from that era,
Right.
right?" And I'm like, you know, put me on. So they started taking me all these jams, and I started like getting booked for these events. And people were like, "It's something different about him than
Hmm.
everybody else on the scene," because everybody else on the scene was pretty much new DJs, right?
Right.
I come from the era where that's
Hmm.
what I did. So it was from there that my man Why Not and a homie Technique, they were like, "Yo," they were part of Rocksteady, and they were like, "Yo, you need to get down." And I was kind of like, "Nah, I'm cool. I like being like, you know, me. I like being an
Your own
individual,
thing.
like
Hmm.
independent." And they were just like, "Yo, you need to get down." And then 2004, 2005, you know, I was doing a party for them, and they just put me down. And I was like, I'm cool. I don't, you know, but it's an honor to be down. Like I'm happy I got down with them. You know, it's a legendary crew. You know, it's tradition, it's lineage. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Nice. So you spent a lot of time at D&D in the 90s. What do you remember most about that time?
So D&D Studio in the 90s, I used to hang out with my man Chris Ramos, and Ramos was KRS One's road manager. He used to road manage Poor Righteous Teachers. He was the first person actually who was sold Dilla's masters to
Oh,
Amir
word.
from Fat Beats, right? So Ramos has been in the industry for a long time. He worked with a lot of people. And he used to just take me to all of the record labels. And while KRS was recording the Return of the Boom Bap album, I was in D&D a lot with Ramos and KRS and them. So like during that time, he was recording, Black Moon was recording, and then the stage. Who else was in there? I think Showbiz might have been in there, but I know for a fact it was Black Moon. It was KRS, and you know everybody would just walk through. Like Grandmaster Flash would come through. It would just be like a who's who of cast of people that was there. So I think just the most memorable, it was basically the who's who of cast, you
Hmm.
know, walking through and
Hmm.
hearing people's albums in the process of why they're being recorded, even before they're even, you know, out. You're just hearing the session. So I think that's the most memorable, you know, thing.
Nice. I knew Ramos was his name. I didn't know about his Dilla involvement, though.
Yeah, Ramos. If you talk to like DJ Amir from Amir, who worked Fat Beats, like
Hmm.
Ramos was the guy that no one knew what he did, but he was always there and always involved in something. And yeah, he sold Amir and Fat Beats Dilla's masters early on, like before anybody really. I remember he told me about Dilla before I even knew who Dilla was. He would come back and be like, "Yo, this dude Dilla and Frank and Dank," and I'd be like,
Those are my
I
dudes.
don't know." You know, like
Hmm.
he would let me hear, and I'd be like, "Okay, it's cool." Like, you know,
Hmm.
and fast forward, Dilla, you know, so yeah, Ramos was up on everything, you know, before everybody was up on it.
Nice. Have you heard anything about the D&D documentary?
I'm hearing like little bits and pieces about things.
Hmm.
It would be good to see how it all comes together. It's crazy because there's always so many parties and hands and things involved. It's like how do you really capture? You would have to track down everyone
Yeah,
from 93, like everyone, and talk to everyone to really get a full history of it. So yeah, it'll be great to see how that comes across.
I'm excited.
Yeah, yeah.
Which when you go digging, which genres do you spend the most time with, or anywhere in vinyl soul?
Um, when I go in, first thing I'm looking for is funk, soul, soundtracks, jazz. It's almost like the closest aisle to me is what I'm hitting first, unless I
Okay.
have something in my mind that I'm really looking for. But like
Hmm.
I'm going right funk, soul, jazz, soundtracks, easy listening, and then I'll probably make my way to the psych rock, and if there's like a library section, then I'll go there. But it's usually the funk soul because as a DJ, I'm looking for what I can play, you know,
Right.
at parties and stuff like that. So it's not always what I want for home listening. It's more so like, all right, what can I play out or what am I looking for? And then after that, then I go to like the disco 12-inch section to look for stuff.
Nice. So I've come to realize that this question can come off a bit off limits to some, but would you be willing to share which cities tend to produce the best record shops with the best collections that you've?
Um, uh, okay, so at one time, I would say like New York had everything. Like
Mhm.
it was New York heavy. And then as I started to travel, I started realizing the regional places like Seattle, in the Pacific Northwest, I would be like, okay, wait a minute, it's something different going here because you're not only getting East Coast stuff, you're getting West Coast stuff, but then you have your own regional funk soul stuff that's not making it to the East Coast.
Mhm.
And then as I started branching out further, it was like, oh man, I go to Amsterdam, and not only do you have like American, but wait, you've got Polish funk and Polish psych and Russian funk, so it's more so. I think now it's more so just the curator of who's running these shops versus
Right.
like the city, because I used to think one city had it all, and then it was like, no, actually every city kind of has it. It's more so the person who's curating the shop
Mhm.
who has that air and the knowledge and can go get the records. So yeah, but at one time it was New York. New York was the hub of everything, where every record was in New York. So
Yeah, we're losing our grasp on that, I think.
I think the East Coast in general has is,
Hmm.
is losing it. Like I tell people, New York started the hip hop DJing, right? Philly took it over from there, and then it went
Hmm.
to the West Coast. And the West Coast, in my opinion, kept hip hop DJing, like that hip hop, like J Rock and the Beat Junkies, like they
I agree with
they
that.
picked up
Hmm.
what we were doing, right? And then Japan took it over and took it someplace else. So yeah, it's like things just keep moving, and eventually maybe it'll come back around. But
Yeah, yeah, it's like a logical progression.
right,
Hmm.
right.
So you've got a couple pieces behind you. Why is it that most DJs collect much more than just records? I know, for example, that you're a big toy and comics fanatic.
Right. Because DJs, we like physical things,
Hmm.
and I think it's eye catching. We look at album covers. We look at
Right.
album covers, and it's what appeals to us and what attracts us to buying a record. So I think
Hmm.
it's just that nature of liking physical items. But then you have DJs who are collectors who are deeper than the average DJs. Like I look at myself, I look at Biz Markie, I look at Supreme La Rock, you know, certain
Hmm.
DJs we've been collecting outside of records. Like I've been collecting my whole life.
Hmm.
I've been collecting my whole life. But in terms of collecting as we know it today, it's like early '90s, Biz Markie, Supreme. Like we were digging for toys, digging for movie posters, digging for BMX bikes, all that before it really became cool. And like I mean,
Hmm.
DJs are nerdy. We do nerdy things. We like nerdy things.
Hmm.
So
You're,
yeah, that's
yeah,
why
I
it's
think
just
you're all self-proclaimed nerds for sure.
yeah. We do nerdy things. So it's and honestly, for me, it's what keeps me young.
Hmm.
It keeps me young and keeping things around me that take me back to childhood years and like a time where you had no bills and you can just ride your bike all the time and just enjoy life. So
Nice.
yeah, that's why I'm collecting.
Yeah, nice. Skeme, just because you dropped his name, do you know any idea about how Biz is doing?
No, I don't, and I need to really ask Supreme because Supreme might know because he talks to Cool B and stuff like that. But like prayers for Biz, like because Biz, I, I I like to put Biz on a high pedestal, but
Hmm.
Biz is the guy who has so much knowledge,
Yeah.
right? He needs to do a book because I feel like if anything ever happens to Biz, so much
Hmm.
knowledge disappears
Will be
because
lost.
he knows a lot about a lot of different things and a lot of people who was there in 1970 whatever. And
Yeah.
Biz is he's just a walking encyclopedia of just so much history and knowledge. So I'm really hoping that he pulls through and he's good.
Me too, because there was so much going around for a bit about how he was doing, and then it just went silent. So I've been trying to talk to people and see if anyone's heard anything. So
Yeah.
yeah, here's hoping. Do you prefer playing to more intimate crowds or in smaller clubs, or do you prefer like the festivals with the larger crowds?
Um,
That show.
it's a combination. Like my preference, I love intimate crowds. I love the
Mm-hmm.
like 250, 300 person like small spot. I love it because it takes me back to house parties and basement parties. When you really felt the energy of people,
Mm-hmm.
in a party, and you can make eye contact with people, and you see people like you feel the energy of them so much in the moment of being at a party. But like I love playing the bigger room places, especially like Europe, because it's a different feel when you're playing a bigger room, especially like funk, soul, disco, jazz, like in the big rooms. I love that as well. My preference is always, the smaller venues because you just feel the energy. And I love like giving the energy to people and then getting it back from people. I feel like
Yeah.
it gets lost in translation the bigger the club, you know.
Right.
So, but then I love playing festivals, especially summertime outdoors.
Yeah.
Everybody's happy. I can change my music up a little bit and play like outdoorsy, like festival. So, yeah, like preference, I prefer to play the smaller, intimate
Mm-hmm.
spots. But at the end of the day, I'm a party rocker, so I can do it all.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it until you just said it, but I would think with funk and soul, it'd be better to be in a larger room so you had more room to move.
Yeah, but yeah. Well, for dance wise, yes, definitely, definitely.
How do you manage to keep things analog in an industry dominated by digital media?
Well, for one, there's so many labels that I'm still receiving so much product from
Mm-hmm.
that's only analog. So they're keeping me fed as a DJ, but also playing analog and playing vinyl really separates you from other DJs, but it also tests you to say like, okay, what can I pack in this bag that holds 345 and 50 12 inches? What can I
Mm-hmm.
pack on this and go on a month-long tour and not repeat records and play the same
Right.
sets? It's the challenge. When you're doing digital, you've got the whole discography right there at your palm of your hands. It's too
Mm-hmm.
easy for me. It's like, okay, now I just have to figure out what the crowd wants, and now I can do it. With
Mm-hmm.
me, it's like, okay, no, I've felt the
You like
crowd.
the challenge. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love being challenged. So that's why for me, I prefer just playing analog. Like it's like I have all the genres. I can go in like when I pack bags. If I'm packing 45s, it's a lot of funk, soul, disco, rare groove. Like, and then I'll back my bag of 12, 50 12 inches or LPs of funk,
Mm-hmm.
soul, jazz, rare groove, and it's on.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So outside of Philly and NYC, which cities have the best live crowds that you've experienced?
Amsterdam, Amsterdam, definitely live. Russia's extremely
Mm-hmm.
live. Yeah, St.
Okay.
Petersburg, extremely live. And then Japan, of course.
Yeah.
Each of those crowds like amazing, and they go all in. They go all in. So I feel like a lot of like in like a lot of Eastern European countries, they just party. But Russia,
Mm-hmm.
Japan, Amsterdam, those are amazing party cities
Nice.
and countries.
Yeah. Speaking of Japan, how did your Magma Taishi Returns Japan tour come together 10 years ago?
Okay, so this probably was 13 years now, where I
Okay.
was in Korea. Well, it's been going on 10 years, but it was probably 13 years ago. I was
Yeah,
in Seoul.
okay.
Yeah, I was in
Mhm.
Seoul, Korea. And I was having lunch with DJ T, who's a DJ from Japan, and then a guy named Mr. Sue. And Mr. Sue is the baseball player Ichiro from the Yankees. It's his brother. So
Okay.
like one went into hip hop, one went into baseball. and we were sitting down at dinner, and we were just talking about like childhood TV shows, like Japanese TV shows, and they were surprised that I knew the Japanese TV shows because that's what I grew up on as a kid. And I mentioned a show called Space Giants, which in America is called Space Giants. In Japan, it's called Magmatashi. And they looked at me and they were like, whoa, 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 how do you know this? You know, and I told them, I was like, this is what I grew up on. So Mr. Sue, who's like an older guy, he's like, look, from now on, we have to call him Magmatashi. So that was the beginning of, you know, the Magmatashi Return Store. Yeah. So I was bestowed that name, you know.
So you just kind of went with that and you're like, I have to build something around this.
Have to build it. And it's been like 10 years deep of doing it. And it's been amazing.
Nice. Hopefully that continues after all this.
I'm hoping so.
Your Butter 45's Germany tour was also supposed to celebrate its 10th anniversary this year. What can international fans missing these tours do to stay connected with you?
So my Nostalgia King site, you know, that's one way to stay connected. My Nerve FM app, streaming app, that's another way, you know, and my Instagram, like I still give people what I've always given them, which is content. Content is key. Content is king, you know, and I still give the people on my tours the content, even though we're not touring, you know, because you still have to stay engaged with people, you know, and that's the most important thing is staying engaged. And if you fall off from that, it's so hard to get back on, you know, if you fall off from that, you know, because people are quick to leave and jump ship because there's something else new coming along. So if you stay engaged with people and, you know, always interact and respond with people, you know, they're there. So I'm giving people what I've always given them, you know.
Nice. So you mentioned this a little bit earlier. So labels around the world are still sending you enough promos to fill out your memorable mixes. Were you worried when the pandemic hit that this would affect your collection?
No, actually I wasn't, because I had already like a small crate's worth of test presses and promos that would eventually come out, right? So like I get stuff like from Funk Night Records, I get stuff 3-4 months in advance before it's even out. So I had a stack of promos that would have helped me over, you know, during the pandemic. Like who would have known the pandemic would have been this long, right? So, but I had records to hold me over, which, you know, was great. Like I didn't have to, you know, go into the old bag and pull records for mixes. I was still good. Fast forward to now, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. We're still in the pandemic, but labels never stopped working during the pandemic. Artists never stopped working, you know. So fast forward to now, these records are now coming out. So I'm right on point with things, you know. So labels are the saving grace for me as a DJ. You know, all of the product that they send me, you know, it keeps me working, you know, and it keeps me breaking records before other DJs get their hands on them.
And I've also seen you've been digging a little bit too.
Yeah, well, you know, the digging thing never stops. You know, it never stops. And even though we couldn't go out during the beginning of the pandemic, like I said, I had enough product at home that I could, you know, go dig in the crazy. There's still stuff from March, April, May that I haven't really listened to, you know. So there's always something around. And yeah, like now we're digging again. Now I'm able to jump on flights and, you know, go around the corner to the record store. Like it feels good to get out again and hit flea markets and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, people are ready. You've said that you've been using this time to experiment and push new ideas of content, but also looking to other creatives outside of the DJ world to be inspired by. Who would you name as some of those creatives?
Well, like, you know, like my inspiration, a lot of people find it surprising that my inspiration isn't necessarily other DJs. Right. Like I love other DJs. There's other DJs that inspire me to do things, but I've always been a visual guy. So, you know, at like my Magmatashi Returns or my Buddy 45's party, we're always showing visuals. Right. So like graffiti artists, Crash and Days from New York, like legendary OG Subway New York, you know, graffiti artists, like those guys, Dr. Revolt, who, you know, made the Yo MTV Raps logo and did the Camp Low album cover. My man Why Not from Rocksteady, amazing visual artist. You know, my man Down Rock from the UK, amazing visual artist. So I'm always looking at the visual arts. Like a nice red door on a shitty house inspires me. You know, if it's a beautiful red, like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm inspired by visuals. And whenever I see artists, you know, visual artists, I'm just like, okay, that's inspiring. You know, so I look at the brush strokes by painters is how I DJ. That's what I'm thinking. You know, I see their brush strokes, that's how I'm DJing.
I like
So
it.
yeah.
So I've seen folks inquiring about your Always Good gear. Is there any update on when the next run will be available?
All right, so Always Good. That's my Korean sponsor and Seoul, Korea, and we're actually doing another run for late fall, wintertime. You know, the first run that we did. When did we do it? Was it springtime? I'm so bad with time right now. But
Yeah, me too.
yeah, you know, like so, like the first run sold out like immediately, and it sold out pretty much in Korea immediately. Like Korea is one of my biggest supporters. You know, I had a handful here in America, but the next launch they'll be, you know, split between Korea and then the new USA department of, you know, the Into the Deep brand. And, you know, they've been big supporters of me over the years, and, you know, they've brought me to Korea many times to play. And yeah, when they said you want to do a line, I was like, no brainer, you know, let's do it. So yeah, so wintertime, I'm going to relaunch it and, you know, have t-shirts, hoodies.
Those hoodies, yeah.
Those hoodies are fresh, right? I'll make sure you get one.
All right, I'll be hitting you up. But no, you should definitely have like a US. Definitely keep the Korean one, but have like a US base.
Yeah, so what they did is they have two departments, one in Korea, and then the other one is based on the East Coast here in Virginia, actually.
Oh, good.
So now it'll be easier to get stuff, because before I had to basically take orders and then tell Korea, like, okay, send me all of these orders, but now they'll already have them and they can, you know, facilitate them and get them out to people.
Nice. Distribution. So you're well known as a DJ, producer, culture ambassador, foodie, but you're also a journalist. When did you start writing?
I've always been a writer. I feel like I've always been a writer, whether it was as a kid, you know, drawing and writing comic books, or like late 80s, I used to write a zine on like computer hacking, you know, and then fast forward, you know, always reading music magazines, horror magazines. Like I've always just written, and I've always wanted to know, like, interview people and know more about people than, you know, what magazines were writing. Because for me, like, some of my favorite people are my favorite people not because of their known craft. It's because what they do on the other side that no one knows about is why they're my favorite people. You know, so I've always just written. I've always reviewed records. I've always, you know, it's just a part of me, what I do, you know. So writing, and then once I started the Hot Peas and Butter website, which, you know, was rebranded into the Nostalgia King website, I just carried on doing record reviews. And, you know, it's a way of communicating to people without actually having to pick up the phone call, you know, pick up phone and communicate. It's just like, let me write, you know, stories. And I feel like we're starting to lose the art of writing and reading.
Yeah, written journalism is, because no one has the attention span.
Right. Journalism is at a poor state right now. It's at a really poor state because when you think about it, people get paid to write blogs on like Hypebeast and all these other sites. And it's like, okay, you're reviewing fashion, but you don't really like that fashion. You're getting your 5 cents per word to write about this, but you don't really love it. When you look at journalists that, you know, did Rolling Stone magazine and Blues and Soul magazine, like, these guys were like journalists. They were music journalists, you know. Now it's just like people are writing so-and-so dropped their new album. Yeah, but it's not that good. And there's really no honest content coming out right now. It's more so like, I can't shit on this album, you know, because
blacklisted.
Yeah, you know, Rolling Stone, they would trash an album if it was garbage. You know, they would trash the album, and that's pure journalism. So, like, yeah, so me, I've always written, and I'm gonna continue to write, you know, because it's just, I love writing, you know.
And I appreciate your writing, because I can agree, like, a lot of the stuff that I read on blogs and whatever is maybe like a paragraph or two long, but you write like as long as you need to. Like, maybe it's a paragraph because that's all it needs, but then there's more of it.
Right.
That more.
Exactly.
So you brought up Nostalgia King. Where did your idea for that initiative stem from?
Okay, so Nostalgia King just basically because, I live in a nostalgic world. I'm living like it's yesterday, but still I'm living for tomorrow. It's like it's I train I bring everything from my youth to my adulthood. Like I still do everything. As a kid, if I would go to a house party and come home, first thing I'm doing is putting the pizza in the oven and watching the Kung Fu or Godzilla flick, right? It's what I still do as an adult now. Go to a party, come home, watch cartoons or kung fu flicks or whatever. It's just what I do. So the Nostalgia King was just that, and like I'm the king of nostalgia. There's no one else. There's no other Scheme Richards. There's no other Nostalgia King. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what it was. I wanted to bring the good times of, like I said, when we had no problems, when no bills, it was just like everything was lovely, and
Mm-hmm.
bring it to the present. Now we have bills and stuff, but I want people when I'm playing on the dance floor or introduce them to music to like just completely like lose it, just be like, you know what, I'm not worried about bills today, because this music is taking me away,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not worried about relationship problems because this music is taking me away. It's healing me,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the
Yeah,
nostalgia.
you said taking them away, but also taking them back, like hearing a song that might have made them remember something,
Exactly.
made them nostalgic. What kind of content do you look to share on your site? Does it change, or do you kind of have like a focus?
So it's always music heavy. It's always going to be the newest, funk, soul, jazz, rare groove, hip hop, 45, 12-inch, whatever. But I have to, bring a part of me in there. So it's always going to be something that I'm geeking out on, whether it's a new coffee table book by Cause, or whatever movie I'm feeling right now, kung fu flicks, black exploitation flicks. It's kind of, just whatever I'm feeling. It's my site is an extension of me. Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
comic books, whether it's ride my BMX bike on a Saturday morning, it's an extension of me. So you're going to get a hodgepodge of a little bit of everything, but mainly music. And it's just an extension of me. And people who know me, it's like, okay, yeah, we can see him writing about that, or we can see him doing that because that's Scheme right there. And once again,
It's
there's
very
nobody else
genuine.
doing that. Yeah, it's genuine. There's nobody else doing that, and there's nobody else doing what I'm doing. So it's not only a site that reviews music, but it's also like, okay, a personal look into my world of what I'm into.
Mm-hmm. So I can say that I've learned about a bunch of new music just from looking at your site. What are some of the most notable records that you've featured in recent years?
Um, well, I'll say the new Misha Panfilov albums, like from Estonia. Like Misha Panfilov is like an amazing composer, writer, musician from
Mm-hmm.
Estonia, and like I think I put the world onto him. You know, the Soul Surfers from Russia, another amazing funk soul band, which I introduced them to the world back in like I don't know early 2000s, something like that. Like I think those are like my greatest. But then again, like I've broken a lot of records, like a lot of records. A lot of DJs tell me like, man, I would have never known about that record if I wouldn't have checked your site. So there's almost like too many to even
Mm-hmm.
like remember which ones. But like every record by almost every independent label right now over the last 10, 15 years, you heard it from my site first.
I like it. How does your Nerve FM channel compare to the old school FM radio spots that conjure feelings akin to your Nostalgia King alias?
All right, so the Nerve FM streaming app is basically I'm curating like how I would want to listen to FM radio,
Mm-hmm.
80s, 90s. Like I'm doing themes. Like you had your mix hour where it was all slow jams at midnight. With the
Mm-hmm.
Quiet Storm. I'm still doing mixes catered to that. Or like okay, this is Sunday jazz. I'm still doing jazz mixes of just like dope jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Funk soul. Like okay, this is funk soul. I want to take you back to Saturday afternoon with Soul Train. So I believe in like being the D. I don't just want to put a hodgepodge of music together. I want to
Mm-hmm.
do themes. And if I am doing different genres, right, it has to make sense.
Yeah.
So I'm blending them and putting them together how radio DJs really used to put them together versus now where it's like you have a select playlist of music that you have to play. You know, the music is about freedom. You being a DJ is about freedom, you know, and understanding like, okay, this music is good. It's not about, oh, how much am I getting paid to play this music?
Right.
You know, so yeah, it's just like, it's when you listen to my station, it's pretty much radio, right? But you're not getting commercial hits. You're getting records that are being broken for the first time, like you would listen to on real radio. You know, so yeah, it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
Yeah, you've gotten some good feedback, I think.
Yeah.
Has the pandemic affected your routine at all, or have you always been one to stay home to focus on your craft?
I'm a homebody. You know, I'm a homebody. Like I love being out, I love traveling, but I love coming home. And you know, during the daytime, even pre the pandemic, like I'm home. You know, but if I'm not running the streets to go dig or something like that, I'm usually home.
Mm-hmm.
Traveling, yeah, that's the only thing that has changed is the fact that I can't travel. I'm still doing everything that I was doing before. You know, like I'm not like I look forward to wintertime and snowstorms when we can't go out the house. People lose their mind. Like I can't. I'm like I got more than
I'm
enough
not
stuff.
looking forward to it.
Right? I enjoy being locked in, like because I know I have the freedom to go when I want to go. But you know, like so nothing's really changed for me. I still get up. I check emails, I eat breakfast, you know, and then it's emails and calls and then writing for the site and stuff like that. So I like the routine of doing what I do. It works, you know, and then noon, 1 o'clock, it's lunchtime, and then, you know, emails, and then maybe I'll work on a mix, you know, but I've been staying busy. I've been knocking out a bunch of mixes for different people and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been, you know, I'm doing writing for a couple magazine outlets. So yeah.
So speaking of routine, you kind of live your life by routine, but your days appear to always come across as incredibly busy. How do you avoid burnout?
I don't know because I haven't caught burnout yet.
You don't really know how you avoid it because you haven't had to deal with it.
Yeah, like the once or twice where it was like, okay, it's not really burnout, it's just being unmotivated. Like nothing's striking me. Like I know some people who get burnout, they're like, okay, I'm turning this off. I'm not even looking at this for a month. For me, it's just, you know, I'm just not inspired by anything around me. You know, so I've never really gotten burnout. You know, it's just something that's not inspiring me. And then when I'm not being inspired, then I go and I look for things to inspire me that'll, you know, jumpstart my creativity again. But, you know, when you have so many interests, you know, or you have so many good humans around you that have good interests, you know, and good humans around you from like, it's kind of hard not to be inspired, you know, and keep, so I've never, you know, been burnt out. It's just always like, okay, a lack of inspiration today, but then I go focus on something else and then it comes back around. Yeah. So it's weird. Like I'm always busy. My days are always busy, but I'm having too much fun to get burnt out.
I like it. So I've spoken to many DJs in recent months who play 45s more regularly than 12s. What is it that you guys like so much about 45s, other than them being easy to transport?
See, that, you know, it's funny because that's a crazy question in a sense because so funk and soul DJs played 45s because that's the only way you could get that music was on 45. It wasn't about the format. It wasn't about the trend of it. It was about, no, 45 was the cheap way for labels to put this music out, right? Regional artists, local artists, we don't have a budget. We're just going to do 45s. So for me being a funk soul DJ, I play because that's the only way you're going to get the music, you know? And this is pre the 45 trend. And then it became a thing where it was like, okay, people are just playing it because it's fun, because it's cool, because it's the trend. But they're playing music that's readily available on 12-inch, on Serato, on like, you know, so for me, it's because the music is not available on anything else. For a lot of others, it's because it's easy to carry. Yeah, it's very easy to carry, you know, but that ease factor then becomes, it's easy to carry the same thing that you was carrying on 12 inches. You know, you're going to take the same hits. So you're kind of playing the same set that you would play on 12-inch. So why not just play on Serato if you're going to do that?
Fair.
So,
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like the music's not available on anything else.
Yeah, it's become a trend for artists to release their stuff on 45s now, I've been seeing.
And it's also cheaper. It's also cheaper for labels to that. So I understand, especially for funk, soul, jazz. I understand that it's much cheaper. For me, hip hop is 12-inch. That should be a 12-inch all day. And granted, yeah, they're doing it on 45s. There's a lot of dope stuff coming out on 45, but funk, soul, jazz, that stuff's like 45 for me all day. Like, hip hop was always 12-inch. So yeah, but like I said, it's good because more people are playing now, and hopefully that brings out the best in people to dig deeper, because now artists and labels can afford to press vinyl when before you couldn't afford to press 12 inches because it was expensive. It's just easier now. So it keeps the cycle of music flowing.
Indeed. So both your debut 45 releases, King Cornbread, and your latest Rock Latin Steady sold out faster than most had a chance to get their hands on a copy. You and RBM Boots are a modern day dream team. When can fans expect the next one?
Actually, we already started talking about that. When this one sold out, the last one sold out in the weekend. It sold out during the weekend. So it was like in and out. And already, like, I have multiple, releases set up. Like I think I have 4 cassette tape releases dropping. Well, I have four that's done already. So I think there's one with record break-in, and I have another one with strictly cassette, and those will be out between like October, November. But I was talking to the label today, and I was like, I need to drop the next 45. Like, so they were like, well, let's do it. But I'm going to wait until January, February, because the pressing plants closed down late November, and I already have in my mind what I want to use. So yeah, I think, January, February is when the next one will drop. And, that'll be here before we know it, actually.
No joke.
Yeah.
I think it's good to space out your releases. So
I'm trying to stay consistent. I'm trying to stay consistent with it. But the one thing about this pandemic, if we wouldn't have been in the pandemic, I wouldn't have done these 45s because I would have been traveling. I wouldn't have been home to have time to even think about doing them. And I thought about doing them before, but I never had time to do them. So the pandemic was actually a gift and a curse for me. It put me to work, in other areas.
I think there's upsides, not a lot, but there's definitely upsides to it that people can focus on to stay a little bit.
Exactly. Like I said, like during hard times, like recessions and like the pandemic, that's when the most amazing creativity is supposed to come out. If you look at through the course of history and struggles, the most amazing art and music happened during those times. So for me, it was like, I can't waste any time. Who knows how long the pandemic's going to last? But like the minute it hit and I couldn't go in there, I was like, got to shift gears and focus on something else.
And those are the people that have been kind of staying afloat.
Yeah.
We're able to shift gears really fast. You touched on this earlier. I read that you'd rather see a DJ cooking in the kitchen and changing the record after it plays an entire side than stream a set on IG Live. Do you find an audience as important to your live shows as your records?
For me, like I honestly, I don't want to see a DJ at home play what they play in the club. Like that's just my personal opinion. It's just like we've seen that. Once again, it goes back to what more is there about you? Like, I want to hear what you listen to at home, not what you're playing at the club. Like, you're at home. There's no excuse not to go deep with the records because you don't have to carry any records out. You're home, right? So, like, and I don't want to watch you DJing per se, your exact sets that you're playing in the club anyway. I'd rather you cooking, especially if you're a chef or whatever, or like I've seen DJs who were like painters and they're just like, I'm going to play this music and I'm going to paint live. Like that's interesting to me. I'm always about giving people more than what they know you for. People know me for DJing, but then, I used to land in the country or city and people would say like, yo, we want to take you digging. And then it went to, yo, I heard you're on your burger kick. Like when you land, we need to take you to this burger spot. Right. And then it was, oh, we need to take you to this beer spot. And then, so it's, I want to know what else is about you, that makes you special, because right now we're all in the same boat. We're all kind of not working DJs, you know. What else is there? What separates you from the next person? Because being all of us being on equal playing exposed a lot of DJs
Mm-hmm.
and let a lot of other DJs shine.
Yeah, people have said it's put everyone kind of on a level playing field.
Yeah. And it really exposed a lot of people and like their selections. And so like I'm just like Cut Chemist. I like to see Cut Chemist. You know, he killed it. Mayor Hawthorne is another one. Mayor Hawthorne he like opens up these crazy bottles of wine and he just plays records and he talks to people. Like, I love that. You know, like, give me something more. Give me your character. You know, I need more.
I met Mayor like more than 10 years ago. He's an interesting guy.
He is, right? You know, so that's what I like to see. I want to see like the character in you, because DJs complained about people bothering them in the club or asking for requests, and now we're all on IG saying like, what do you want to hear? Or looking at the screen and being like, who's in the chat room, when we were just complaining about people bothering us. So, you know, give us something else.
I didn't even think about that until you just said it, but yeah, it's so true.
You know, give us something else. I want to know the other side of you. We all know we DJ. Give us the other side of you.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good radio show idea. The other side. So you attended the first hip hop auction at Sotheby's last month. Did you bid on anything, or at least see anything you wish you could have added to your collection?
I didn't bid on anything. Because honestly, there wasn't really much there that I really wanted. There was the Wild Style cell, animation cell that was used for the movie. Like, I would have really loved to have that. There was like some hip hop flyers, like from the 70s, like, but I have hip hop flyers. There was boom boxes, but I have boom boxes. Like, there wasn't
I wanted one of those.
Yeah, see, but there wasn't really anything that I was like, oh, I need to break the bank and get this, you know, because I feel like there's still things that was in that auction. There's still similar stuff out there, you know, that I'm like, okay, I could get that as a replacement for that at a lot cheaper price.
Right.
You know, so, but no, it was interesting to see what was there and how it all came together. And I was like, okay, because hip hop, we've never had that before. Graffiti has always had auctions and galleries and stuff like that, but hip hop memorabilia wasn't a thing. And the crazy thing is, as hip hoppers, we never really collected, like some of us did, but a lot of people never collected or saw value in that stuff.
In each other's.
Right.
Things,
it's not until now, like baseball players and athletes, they trade jerseys, they trade baseballs. Like, as hip hoppers, people, you know, yeah, you rarely even wanted an autograph back in the day. You know, you might have wanted a picture. You know, there was no value, but so now I feel like that helped make a value out of these things. You know, so you know that's a good thing. It was great to see that, and I know they're working on another one, so that's going to be an ongoing thing. You know, so it'll be interesting to see, you know, what's in the next auctions.
I also think it's a good way for them to stay like feeling appreciated. I was talking to Say Adams about how he didn't put anything in the first one, but I told him I hope he puts stuff in the next one.
Yo, Say is sitting on a gold mine of stuff. He's sitting on a gold mine. Like, there's so many people that are just sitting on stuff. Like, I know Jazzy J is sitting on a lot of his archives. You know, I mean, I had a conversation with Cut Chemist, and we were talking about how, like, what would we have that we would want to sell? Me 20, 30 years ago, I'd be like, nothing is for sale. Me now, I'm like, well, you can't really take everything with you. What can I get rid of? You know, and there's very few things that I really think I could get rid of because I miss things too quick, you know. But it'd be great. Like, you know, I mean, there's now value on everything, you know, and people are hungry for this stuff, and it just created a market, which is good because you already had art galleries, you had, you know, sports memorabilia, you know, markets, you had comic markets, you had like all these different markets. So now there's a hip hop market outside of eBay and all of these things.
Well, yeah, now that hip hop's as big as it is.
Right.
Sense.
Yeah.
How have you managed to maintain your positive outlook despite everything going on? I feel like that's what we've been talking about throughout the interview. I just feel like you have such a positive demeanor and aura about you.
Well, you know, honestly, because I'm loving what I do. I mean, that's all it is. I keep a childlike nature with me, as far as just things around me, and I keep happy people around me. I try to surround myself with good humans only. Granted, angry humans is what made me like Philly is what made me have that attitude about DJing and Die Hard, and that hip hop attitude. But yeah, it's life is short. Life is short, and just keeping good people around me, and just I know people aren't happy. We all go through our thing where like you're not happy today or whatever. But then the minute I get a phone call from a homie, or the minute I like get a record in the mail, I'm like, oh man, it's gonna be a good day. So yeah, I'm 90%, 95% always happy.
I like it.
Always no.
So kind of doing a 180 with this question. You were invited to join the Break the Silence, Break the Violence online panel discussion recently, which focused on topics involving Japan's relationship with Black music, as well as anti-Black racism and cultural appropriation in the US, as well as Japan. And you shared that you feel Black Americans have been made to feel alone because you don't feel accepted here in the US, but were also looked at as strangers when you visited Africa recently. Have recent instances of racial violence in the U.S. only amplified this feeling?
For me, no, it hasn't amplified it because I know it's always been there, right? So like it kind of like I almost have the attitude where it's like, it is what it is, whatever. Those are like some really angry, ignorant people. So like it really hasn't amplified. It's being more talked about now because there's cameras and everything is more like social media. Before something happened in New York, the West Coast didn't hear about it because it was only on regional news. So I feel like it's being amplified because we're all getting it at the same time, and it's making national news per se, and it's making national news more on a regular basis now. But like it's always been that way. And honestly, I travel around the globe, and I can honestly say I'm not gonna say I feel more comfortable elsewhere, but like I've never really experienced racism anywhere else abroad. Like, granted, yeah, there's prejudice in this. There's people that look at you like, who are you, like, or I remember the first time I went to Korea in 2007, I think it was, something like that. And I remember somebody said to me, man, if you would have come here 4 years ago, which would have been 2000, they said like people would be looking at you like you had three heads because they had never seen a Black person in Korea. Because why would you see, unless you're on a military base, why would you really see anybody Black? So like I wouldn't look at that as racist. I would just look at it as like, oh wow, there's a Black person here. Like, I mean, yeah. There's people in the suburbs that don't come in contact with Black people because you're way out in the boondocks in the mountains somewhere, and there's no Black people there. Like, so yeah, so it's just weird. But like I said, I've been to Japan. I've never experienced racism in Japan. I get more love in Japan than a little bit. Like, I've never experienced racism. I've been to Russia, like never experienced it. But I know people who've been to Russia that have experienced it. So I think it also has to do with my surroundings and who I'm with. I know who I'm with. So and I never put myself in situations to be at certain places where I know I shouldn't be just because I'm in the country. Africa, yeah. When I went to Ethiopia, it was weird in a sense, like it was dope, but it was weird because you also knew like they're looking at you like, oh, okay, you're Black, but you're not us. Because technically I'm not African. Right? I'm Black, and we're Black in America because most of us don't know what we are. Right? So I tell people, I'm like when I go to Europe and they're like, they look at me because they don't really know what I am, and then they think I'm African, they think I'm Nigerian,
and they don't want to ask.
And they don't want to ask. But then when they find out I'm American, they're like, oh, okay. Like, oh, you're good.
Oh, yeah.
So it's weird. It's weird, but like I have to tell people when I go places, I'm like, nope, I'm not African, I'm not Nigerian, I'm not whatever, I'm Black from America. We created hip hop, which all of you are enjoying, right? We created this culture that the world appreciates and is trying to do, right? So yeah, it's just weird. So like I've never really experienced racism traveling and so it's good. But it was weird. The Ethiopia trip was an amazing trip. It was eye opening, but it also showed me like, okay, we're not necessarily accepted there.
Yeah.
Either. Like hip hop got me there. Like you guys love hip hop, so it's accepted. But like at the end of the day, I'm black from America. I'm not black from Africa.
Yeah, so it's like, so you might not have wanted to hang out with me had I not just played a set for you.
Right. So it's just it's weird. But I mean that goes with in America too. Because there's like certain soul scenes where there's no blacks in that soul scene, yet you're all playing soul music, but y'all don't necessarily mess with black people, and that's our music. So it goes on in America, but as the DJ, like you all, like DJs really get a pass. Like even as a kid DJing, if I would go see like a girl in another neighborhood, the neighborhood thugs or guys would be like, "Oh, he's cool. He's the DJ. He ain't about nothing. He's not about no drama. Like he's cool. He's the DJ." So the DJ always got the pass to go wherever. So yeah.
Well, Skeme, I thank you so much for taking the time. Is there anything else that you want to add or promote?
No, I just want to thank everybody who tuned in. I want to thank you for, hosting this interview. Just stay positive, everybody. Like election time is coming around. Vote. Get your vote in. And just stay positive during this time. This is honestly the time as artists you're supposed to be creating, as well as, spending time with family and friends and really, having that bond, because life is really short. And a lot of people are dying from the pandemic and just in bad health in general. So, yeah, I think this is just a time to be positive amongst all of the craziness that's going on. And, just keep good humans around you, because that's, at the end of the day, it's good people around you that's really going to uplift you when you're down. So I just want to thank everybody for, the support over the years of what I do.
Yeah, well, we're going to keep supporting you.
Thank you.
Have a great night, Skeme.
Yes, you too. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
Thank you.